The United States government is for the first time quietly buying up companies on the stock market. This concept of a country's government investing in private companies is normal in China, but the way it's being done is very new for the United States. I'll show you what I mean. In July 2025, the Trump administration started by investing in rare earth mineral companies. Then in September 2025, the government bought a piece of Intel. And then in October, the Trump administration proposed investing in quantum companies. The reason you want to pay attention to this is because when the government starts to invest in private companies, the government gets to decide certain economic winners and losers, which means your portfolio can become a political game as well. And the people that don't understand what's happening are going to fall behind, which is why in this video, I want to show you what's happening. That way you can use this shift to your advantage as a potential investment opportunity as well. The United States government in 2025 started investing in and buying up private companies as a means of national security because we have been relying on China for things like microchips and rare earth minerals and energy. And if we depend on China, China can then turn off these resources to the United States, which can put us at a detriment. That national security risk is why the government is making a shift. And we've seen the impact of this. The United States buys a lot of rare earth metals from China, and after the whole trade war, China started to limit the sale of these rare earth metals to the United States. Now, this concept of a government buying or investing in private companies is something that China has been doing for a while. It's called state capitalism, and it's been criticized by the United States for many years. Take a read. While only a small fraction of the total number of companies in China are 100% state-owned, 68% of companies in China have some state ownership in 2017. And now here we are entering 2026, and the United States has begun acquiring ownership and control in a handful of publicly traded stocks. And the reason why I'm making this video specifically is because we could be seeing this ramp up in the near future. In October, the Treasury Secretary said that the United States wants to invest in more private companies so we can continue competing with China. What that means in plain English is that the United States government wants to give money to these private companies in the United States, whether in the form of a grant or in the form of a loan or in the form of ownership, where in return the United States government either has ownership or control in a company. That way these companies have more money to grow and to be able to compete against China, which means yes, the government could have some more say in what you do in your business. I'll show you what I mean. In 2025, the United States government acquired a golden share interest in United States Steel. This isn't actual ownership in US Steel, but it gives the government some control as to how US Steel operates. Take a read. Trump got a say in its operations in return, and Trump calls it a golden share. Now, the reason why this matters so much for you as an investor is because that also means the government can get to decide certain economic winners and losers. I'll show you what I mean, but I do want to remind you that for those of you that are investors or want to become investors, I have put together a brand new free investing masterclass where I walk you through how you can get started as an investor and find hidden investment opportunities before everybody else. I'll even show you the exact framework that my firm and I use to research investment opportunities before they hit the headlines. It's a free masterclass, and as a bonus, you're also going to get access to Market Briefs, which is my newsletter for investors, completely free, complimentary as a bonus. So if you want to get the investing masterclass and Market Briefs all for free, I have the link for you to register down in the description below. Let me show you how this shift could determine certain winners and losers by studying history. During the 2008 Great Financial Crisis, the insurance company AIG was on the verge of bankruptcy because they had made a lot of bad investments with their money. But instead of going bankrupt because of their bad investments, the government said that AIG was too big to fail, meaning the government felt that if AIG went bankrupt, too many people would lose their jobs and too many people would lose their insurance payouts, that it would cause a contagion in the economy and be a disaster, so they couldn't let that happen. So the government bailed out AIG with billions of taxpayer dollars. This saved the AIG company. It saved a lot of AIG jobs, and it also provided some cushion to the AIG investors who would have otherwise lost everything, which means the government decided to save AIG, but there were countless other companies that didn't get a bailout that then went bankrupt. What about them? So to be blunt, if the United States government is padding your pockets, it becomes much more difficult for you to fail. Now, obviously, this has certain political/economic implications. I mean, now politics could matter more than innovation. Companies might start to chase government money as opposed to creating better products, and it could hurt competition. But I'm not going to focus on the political side of things because that goes beyond the scope of my channel. Let's talk about what this means as an investor specifically. And I'm going to break this up into three parts. I'm going to talk about what is the government actually doing, what does this mean in terms of funding? Where's the government getting the money to do this? And number three, how does this create opportunity for investors? So let's break this down one by one. There's two things that the United States government can get by taking control of companies or investing in companies. And number one is actual control over what a company does. And number two is adding assets onto the United States balance sheet to fund more United States government spending. Starting with control, I gave the example of US Steel where the United States government doesn't have ownership in the company, but they have certain control over what the company can do. That's what the golden share is. With adding assets to the United States government's balance sheet, the United States government paid about $11 billion to acquire 10% ownership in Intel. This new ownership in Intel now has a piece on the United States government's balance sheet. Take a read. The $8.9 billion investment in Intel is in addition to the $2.2 billion in CHIPS grants Intel has received to date, making for a total investment of $11.1 billion. If the value of Intel continues to go up, the United States balance sheet now has more assets, which means the United States government can then go out and spend more money. This brings us to number two. Where is the United States government getting this money? Number one is congressional approval, which means obviously your taxes. Take a read. The CHIPS and Science Act, signed in 2022, authorizes roughly $280 billion in new funding to boost domestic research and manufacturing of semiconductors in the United States. Number two are tax credits, loans, and grants, which also the source is going to be your tax dollars. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, BIL, the CHIPS and Science Act, CHIPS, and the Inflation Reduction Act, IRA, collectively, the legislation authorized nearly $100 billion in grants and tax credits and roughly $400 billion in loans. So these two funding sources have been passed and approved by Congress for the government to spend tax dollars to provide grants, loans, tax credits, and actual investment into these private companies. And then number three, which has not happened yet, but you may want to keep an eye on, is none other than deficit spending, where the source would also be your taxes. Deficit spending is when the United States government spends money that they don't have, and they do that through debt. And then you pay the price through, number one, your interest payments that the government has to pay back on that debt, and number two, through inflation. But this has not been proven to happen yet for any investment in these companies. Up until now, the investment into these private companies have been through congressional approval and through these tax credits, loans, and grants. And finally, the question is, well, where is the United States government looking at investing their money right now? Because could this create an investment opportunity for you? Potentially. I can't tell you what to invest in. I'm just a random guy on YouTube, but I want you to start thinking like an investor, because we know that the United States government will want to invest in things that will hopefully not lose money. But of course, investing has risks. You're never guaranteed to make money when you invest. In fact, you will lose money at some point, so make sure you always do your own due diligence and never blindly trust a random guy on YouTube. So let's go over where the United States government is investing their money right now. Number one is steel. The United States government hasn't actually acquired an actual ownership stake in steel companies, but the government has acquired control through things like the golden share in US Steel. Number two is semiconductor and chips manufacturing as a way to combat China, because the United States government does not want to rely on China to manufacture these chips and semiconductors for the United States anymore. So we're starting to see more investment by the United States into semiconductor and chips companies here in the United States. Number three are rare earth minerals and rare earth metals. So these things aren't actually rare in the earth. They're rare in the sense that it's expensive and difficult to actually manufacture them and refine them. And China is the leading manufacturer and refiner of these rare earth metals. And the reason why this is catching a lot of attention is because China has slowed down the exporting of these rare earth metals as a way to fight back in this trade war. And so now the United States government wants to build their own supply chain around rare earth metals. I know this can get a little bit complicated, which is why I'm not trying to go too deep into it in this video. If you are interested in learning more about this, rare earth metals, let me know in the comments, because if so, I'll make a whole video on it. But this is where the United States government is making strategic investments into this rare earth minerals and rare earth metals supply chain infrastructure as a way to not rely on China to produce and manufacture these rare earth metals. And number four is potentially quantum computing, because in October, there was a lot of news that was coming out that the government is considering investing in quantum computing, but then not too long after that, there were members from the government that came out and said, no, we're not considering investing in quantum computing. So we don't know for sure, but we could start to see the justification as to why, because quantum computing is essentially supercomputers on steroids. And whoever can control these quantum computing chips can control really the entire internet, because the concern is if quantum computing happens, then you can control essentially the entire banking system, because then you can hack into any bank in the world. And so the concern would be that if China gets quantum computing before the United States, it could be a lot of problems. So yeah, there could be a potential justification. But right now they're saying no, but you're also seeing some people say yes. So we don't know for sure, just something to be aware of. So what we're seeing happen is that the United States government is making a shift into the private investing space, where the United States government is now investing money into private companies, taking ownership in private companies, and taking control over certain private companies. This is a shift that is very new for the United States. It has been happening in countries like China in the past, but it's relatively new for the United States. And this means that the United States government could be picking economic winners and economic losers. How do we know? Because when the 2008 crash happened and the United States government decided to bail out certain companies, those companies stayed alive, while the companies that did not get a bailout didn't. Is it guaranteed? Well, no, of course, nothing is guaranteed. But if the United States government is padding your pockets, it becomes much more difficult for you to fail. Are there political implications? Absolutely. But we're focused on the investor side today, because I want you to understand what this means for your money specifically. And what this means is you got to understand three things. What does this mean for the government? What does this mean for funding? What does this mean for opportunity? For the government, remember, the government is taking control over certain business decisions. Not all of them, but strategic certain business decisions. And number two, certain investments that the government is buying now become assets on the United States government's balance sheet, which means if these assets go up, the United States has a bigger balance sheet, they can spend more money. If these assets go down, not good for the United States government balance sheet, which can impact how much money the government spends. Then we have to think about number two. How does the government get the money to actually fund these investment decisions? And we talked about how Congress has approved certain bills, how there are tax credits, loans, and grants, which are taking your tax dollars so the government can then use this money to invest into these companies, to invest into these industries, to invest into these supply chains. And we have not seen something you want to pay attention to, the potential deficit spending, which again would be an impact on your tax dollars through paying more interest with taxes. And number two is through inflation, which again hasn't happened yet, but you want to keep it in mind, because we have heard the Treasury Secretary say that the government may want to ramp up their investment into private companies to continue competing against China. Again, this also creates investment opportunity. Again, I'm an investing masterclass for you down in the description. If you want to learn more about how you can become an investor or find better investment opportunities, it's completely free. That link is for you down in the description. But can this create opportunities? Potentially. Again, a big gray area, because this is such a new shift that the United States government is making. But what we are seeing right now is that the United States government has taken control over certain decisions that U.S. Steel can make. We have seen that the United States government has made investments into semiconductor and chips companies. We've seen the United States government make investments to rare earth minerals companies. And there are rumors of the United States government potentially investing in quantum companies. Is it true? Is it not true? I have no idea. I just want you to be aware of what's happening, because all of these things are a big shift that are happening right now, which can create opportunity for certain investors. And it can leave certain people behind if you don't understand what's happening. So hopefully this video has helped you be more educated as to what's happening in the government investment space. That way you can be a smarter investor. Again, if you got value out of this video, the best thank you is a referral. So if you could, please share this video with a friend, family member, colleague, or fellow investor, so we can continue to spread the financial education. Thank you. It is getting harder than ever for the average person to get a job and build wealth, because traditional entry-level skills are now being automated by AI. But this is the silver lining, because for those of you that are go-getters that want to go the extra mile, this shift is going to create more millionaires than ever before. And yes, the things that I'm about to show you will apply whether you work a job or run a business.